All right, awesome. Welcome to episode 3 of the Students of Real Estate podcast. Today we are joined by Connor Peck, the Vice President at Northeast Bank and a Bentley alum. Connor, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So I'm Lorenzo. I'm a junior here at Bentley and the VP at Bentley Real Estate Group.
I'm Adam Fuller. I'm a senior advisor at the Bentley Real Estate Group.
Awesome. So, Connor, we just kind of wanted to start off by, telling us a little bit about yourself and where did you grow up?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in Sherburne, Massachusetts, which is about 30 minutes west of Boston. I basically lived there my entire life. I went to middle school, basically, kindergarten through middle school in public schools at Dover Sherburne, and then made my way to Catholic Memorial, which is a all-guys private Catholic school in West Roxbury, starting 8th grade, and did all the way through high school there. So I've kind of been local my entire life. Ended up going to college 30 minutes from where I grew up and haven't really moved outside of the Boston area. So it's that's kind of where
Sounds good. And how did you get into Bentley?
So I was it was mainly through athletics, like my introduction to Bentley. I hadn't heard about it much prior to my like kind of sophomore junior year. I was communicating with coaches pretty much across the country for football, and I had made a connection with a coach who was a recruiter at Bentley who really did a great job of selling me on like the whole school plus athletics type of environment at Bentley in itself. I started to go. I went to a few camps at Bentley, and ultimately ended up deciding to commit there my senior year after having received an offer. And I was looking at a bunch of other schools that were mainly business oriented. So the kind of Bryant's, and then of some of the other kind of local schools around here too. So it kind of narrowed down my search once we were able to kind of figure out everything from a kind of financing standpoint, and then also getting a formal offer in itself. But I was like, what really sold me to when I made my official visit here was, one, the people that I met. My tour guide was awesome. The people that I actually stayed with on the football team felt like I really could connect with them. And then also just like the campus in itself, like walking through the trading room as a senior in high school was like the coolest thing. And being able to kind of hear some experiences that people that I was meeting with have had there, and then also the professors and everything. It was kind of like the whole package deal. So I'm glad that everything worked out. So that's kind of how I ended up committing to Bentley, and then never really looked back after that.
Awesome. So you studied finance and economics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. And did you know you wanted to do, kind of the finance route, or had, from the beginning, or did you have an idea of like, oh, maybe I want to try something else,
Yeah.
etc.?
I actually, so my mom has been in accounting her entire life. I thought I wanted to do accounting. I did like a smaller internship my senior year of high school in like an accounts payable department, and thought it was interesting. So when I was coming to Bentley, I was like, this is what I want to do. Obviously, you don't declare yet. So I ended up taking, I don't know if you guys still call it, but like the general business classes. And it was like the first one, and there was the half of the section was accounting and half of the section was finance, and I learned very quickly that I much rather finance than accounting. It was a little more theory behind it. So that was kind of my switch, and then also just taking econ classes too. I felt like I was able to get like a more really well-rounded kind of understanding of the global economy, the microeconomy, and then also just like the really nuts and bolts of like the working through financial statements, et cetera, within like the finance department too. So it was a great mix. I enjoyed that. I don't know if they still have that kind of like dual major at Bentley, but it was, I loved it.
Awesome. So, how would you describe yourself as a student? Obviously, you were in the football team, so you were, I imagine you were, most of the time with them. But in terms of your career, were you super career oriented, or were you more of, figuring things out as you go?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was being part of the football program there it's very demanding. It's almost you kind of have to treat it like a Division 1 program, but without like the
Right.
perks of a Division 1 program. So you're very invested in the day to day as being an athlete. And then with Bentley just being a very challenging school in itself too, it was more or less like you had to kind of play tandem between the two. So completely transparent, like my career outside of my 4 years was kind of like in my the third thought until probably my junior and senior year, until I was like able to fully grasp going to practice, going to lifts, doing everything, and then like being able to juggle school in between there. So I would say I starting out my freshman year, I was not like 100%. I know what I want to do. Like, this is my career. I want to go forward with it. It was more or less like I knew that, if I worked hard in basically most facets that I could possibly do on a day-to-day basis, like I think everything was going to work out for me. And it turned out that way. So hindsight, if I thought could I have looked at doing a different internship, maybe like freshman and sophomore year, or doing something else, would that have changed where I am today? Potentially, but I'm really happy with the path that I've taken so far, and I think it's not from a lack of sitting around and kind of doing what I can. Like, we were all of the athletes, in my opinion, were extremely busy, so it's hard to be this is I'm so focused on this narrow career path that you kind of build a bit of time management, and also just strict, you have to be strict with yourself in terms of juggling everything. So
Right.
no, definitely not career focus from the get-go.
So to touch on your internship, during your junior year, you interned as a credit analyst at Global Partners. Can you talk us through kind of how you got that opportunity, and then kind of how it affected, your career path or aspirations moving forward?
Sure, yeah. So I found that job through the Bentley career board or page. I did know that I wanted to do something credit oriented. So as I was working through and applying to internships and doing those kind of super days at school, there was I had been talking with a few banks, and then I went into an actual interview at Global Partners, which I believe they're still in Waltham, but ended up really enjoying my conversations with my boss there, and then also just the differences in kind of what they do. So it's a Fortune 500 gas petroleum company. They own, if you guys know what Alltown, Alltown convenience stores are, they own those. They also co-label and kind of white label a lot of other gas stations around the Northeast. So they're a big player around here. And then also kind of just fully understanding what my role within that company would have been. So I was reviewing financial statements for some of their customers that they would distribute the gas and oil to see how they performed over a year-to-year basis, and then determine whether or not, if there was any red flags for the most part, but then also seeing if there's potentially ability to increase their credit capacity for the upcoming season or upcoming year, so on and so forth. So I really enjoyed my time there. I also was able to work on some outside projects, which was there was a larger intern project where we had to come up with a marketing plan for their new all-town facing kind of, it was more customer oriented type of convenience store. And then another thing was working on different projects where I was reviewing their competitors and putting a slide deck together to kind of see where Global matches up against them. So it was very fascinating. I enjoyed my time there a lot, but it also kind of led me to the point that it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do with my career. I don't think I wanted to work for a gas and petroleum company. So it was it kind of gave me this like certainty that, I did want to go into banking. I did want to, mainly focus on getting out and kind of pursuing a career in that versus potentially going to global or going to work for, Gulf has some like corporate offices around the Boston area too. But yeah, so it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot, and it was, I think what internships for the most part are supposed to be meant for is it, something that you really want to find out that you want to do for the rest of your life, or is it kind of like a test sample of, is this something that I can kind of continue with or do this at post school? And I came to the realization that like I learned a lot, but it's not what I 100% wanted to do.
Got it. So, moving on, after you graduated as well, you also were a credit analyst at Northern Bank. Now, before you go into what kind of your daily responsibilities were and what your role was, can you kind of describe what a credit analyst does for those who might be interested in it but don't really know what they do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so a credit analyst, for the most part, is the kind of primary engine of putting together a credit presentation for when a new loan opportunity or sometimes an existing loan modification comes into a bank. They're the ones doing the underwriting and putting the presentation together for that to be rolled up to various levels of committee, mainly depending on the size of the deal. So they are provided with a packet of financials. They're provided with basically a business plan, and you put it into a kind of memo format for them to be presented at a committee. So you could be working on one deal at a time, depending on complexity, or you could be working on 15 deals at a time. So, it's a great like stepping stone, in my opinion, to really understand banking in general, because all of it really relies on credit. Credit is, risk tolerance is like the biggest thing of a bank. Is this something that we can tolerate from a risk perspective, and are we going to make enough yield off of it to be able to get into this investment? So being able to, start out from that, and that's where the most progressions are from, like, if you want to get into like a commercial lending or relationship management type of role, you really have to start out with credit, because it's, a lot of banks want to see an initial credit training program, or at least a few years of experience within that, and able to kind of meet the requisites for, a more advanced role. So it's you can be siloed within as a credit analyst. You could be like mainly C&I focus, which is more business loans, or you could be, CRE focus, which again is commercial real estate. And then you can do like within that, there's like construction, and then it's like you work on basically all different asset classes. So it really depends on what training, whatever program or whatever bank you end up working for, and whatever you get slotted into. But within Northern Bank, I was able to. I started out working at mainly on kind of smaller community-based type loans. So it was, the volume size that I was working on was smaller, but the quantity size was, in terms of dollar size, but the quantity that I was working on was a lot. So I was able to work on a lot of different opportunities and kind of have a broad stroke understanding of multiple different, businesses in itself, and then started to parlay myself into working more on the commercial real estate side, which is ultimately where I've ended up and what I wanted to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious, what kind of drew you to that side of, like, why did you want to do the lending side instead of the ownership side?
That's a great question. Nothing so much is that it's like, in order to be an owner or like are you saying work on the equity side of things?
Yeah, on the equity side, yeah.
Yeah, I never really wanted to go into that. I knew I wanted to go into banking, and that wasn't really just to be working like in commercial real estate. So like I knew I wanted to be on the relationship management side of things, and commercial real estate is, while working in banking, commercial real estate is what I really fell in love with. So that kind of, I didn't really want to get into the real estate industry obviously is so vast, but what I wanted to do was not so much like completely dive into that, but I've since done that, and it's been, it's what I've found that I really wanted to do and I love to do. But I guess I never really like was applying like post school to, kind of, principal types of firms. It didn't really come across my mind.
Got it, got it. Okay, fair enough. I want to kind of go back a little bit, and mention that, you had mentioned that when you started as a freshman, you didn't know what you wanted to do, and obviously, I didn't neither. And I just wanted to point out that because I feel like a bunch of freshmen might be a little bit, intimidated because they don't know exactly what they want to do yet, but it's, you got time, right?
Mm-hmm.
College, you gotta enjoy college, right? That's what I did my first year. I was just enjoying it, and then as time moved on, I met people, and then I got introduced into the real estate space, and that's where now I am. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that it's obviously you don't have to know exactly what you want to do when you're a freshman. You'll figure it out as you go. And so then before we move on, actually, can you go a little bit more into what were your daily responsibilities at Northern Bank?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so mainly it was. I was working for under the silo of the community lending team. So a lot of it was, like I had mentioned, sometimes having calls with borrowers with the kind of EVP, explaining what their ask was, putting together a list of diligence items that I needed in order to put together a credit presentation, and then working that through. So, a full credit memo can take upwards of 2 weeks to put together, depending on complexity, or it can be, couple days, so on and so forth. So it's, you're reviewing financials for, previous years, you're reviewing financials from a pro forma basis, meaning on a look forward basis, and then kind of putting that together and seeing if it's something that if it does the loan in its capacity makes sense for the borrower, but is there enough added protection from a collateral standpoint where if there's any risk associated with that you can kind of mitigate it with you being overprotected via, like, it could be business assets, it could be real estate, so on and so forth. So it's kind of putting together, I would call it like more like a risk memo, outlining like the pros and cons of a transaction on the loan side, and then presenting that to committee, which is usually a few of the like higher ups in terms of like lenders, and there's other people's involved with that too. But yeah, it's a lot of analysis work. It's basically all analysis work, which I loved. It really obviously kind of gave me like a really good like platform for my understanding of credit. But ultimately, I really enjoyed talking with customers and being customer facing. So now having that like background, it's been very helpful with where I'm at now.
So you mentioned, that client-facing aspect, and your progression. I mean, now as vice president, can you take us through kind of how that helped you, or kind of how it pointed you from, going from credit analyst to loan officer, and now kind of more on the relationship-focused aspects of the business?
Yeah, sure. So kind of within that period's transition banks. When I was at Northern Bank, what we went through, it was kind of like the pandemic that kind of catapulted this. But a program that was put out through the CARES Act during the pandemic was called PPP. It was the Paycheck Protection Program, and it kind of offered a lifeline to smaller mom and pop companies to continue to pay their employees during the pandemic when things were shut down. So during that, a lot of banks, smaller banks for that matter, kind of transitioned from doing their normal day-to-day to then making sure that their customers could stay afloat. So we really at Northern Bank kind of overhauled our entire platform, and people were put into different types of roles to see it through. So I was actually, instead of doing like the underwriting side of things, I was put forward with, contacting borrowers, and seeing like their needs, getting the initial diligence files, and then pushing that along to the people that were actually doing the underwriting. So that was a precursor to actually becoming and being like the initial forward-facing aspect of the deal in itself. So as PPP ended and things started to get normalized a bit, I kind of had a great conversation with Northern Bank and let them know like my aspirations were to do lending, and I was very happy with my job at the time, but this is what I wanted to do, and they were in full support of that. It was kind of the biggest risk that I had taken in my career, because it was something that is usually like from a progression level, it's probably 5 to 10 years down the line before you can really get into that, and I was starting out earlier than that. So at the beginning, it was a lot of cold calling. It was a lot of, kind of networking and referrals and whatnot. But, really that risk reaped a lot of reward. And I'm very grateful for them to give me that opportunity. And it's been something that I've never looked back on. I absolutely love it. So now it's, I still at Northeast Bank, still wear a credit hat. I still am a credit function of the bank. I don't, I don't really bring in or originate the deals and be fully a sales member of the bank. So ultimately, the kind of preliminary credit side of things is still my responsibility. So, really making sure that we can structure a deal appropriately, making sure that we're understanding the entire borrower's ask, and making sure that whatever information that we're getting on the forefront is presented in such a way that we can make a appropriate credit decision. But then it's recurring business, people coming in, brokers coming in, asking for various transactions, and then from there working the full life cycle of the deal. So again, bringing in from the start, putting together a term sheet, or negotiate a kind of preliminary negotiations, helping our underwriting team getting all the necessary diligence that they specifically need, while also working on the legal side of things. So working on loan documents with outside and in-house counsel for negotiation purposes, and then closing the deal, and then after the fact actually working as kind of the asset manager for a specific relationship. So it's the full life cycle. Whereas where I was kind of working at Northern Bank, I was doing kind of the first two steps there. And now it's a phenomenal opportunity. I've learned so much over the past 2.5 years of being here than I would have ever imagined. And it's really I think supported me in a way from a career standpoint that I never really would have thought possible making that jump. So, a risk of taking that initial lending role that I had pitched for myself has brought me to this point today. So hindsight, it's been great.
Awesome. So do you think that initial shift into that lending role was the not necessarily the biggest challenge, but the biggest perspective shift, or did you have any trouble kind of picking it up from there based on what you were doing now to a not completely different role, but it's a step up, right? So I was just curious to hear about that transition.
It was really challenging, and what my boss at the time had done was kind of made it very well known from the beginning that what you are going to have to kind of make this out for yourself. It's we're not going to hand you opportunities. You're going to have to go out and find them yourself, and it was uncertainty for sure. And for someone who had only been in banking for a few years, I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit scary. But I kind of knew that regardless if I work hard every day and put in like as much time and effort as I possibly can to make sure that I'm doing a good job, like at the end of the day, if the product doesn't fully see itself through, like I can tell myself that I've worked hard. And like what ended up happening was like stuff did comprise, which was great. So it's, the time that I put in and the risk that I put in, like that I like knowing that this potentially could not have been, I wasn't like, it wasn't like a very safe opportunity, but it ultimately was very rewarding because like of the countless hours of making sure that I was doing the right thing, finding good loans for the bank, and knowing that at the end of the day, like having that credit background that I was just doing for 3 years, like I was able to parlay that heavily into understanding like what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. So yeah, it was definitely challenging for sure, but I think it definitely like made me really have another like it took my like I wouldn't say work effort more, but just knowing that like it's not sunshine and daisies, like there might be something at the end of the tunnel that's not what you want.
So coupling that, risk, uncertainty, and that challenge of the new position. Have you encountered that again throughout your career? Do you think that was, the biggest hurdle that you faced, or, what's your perspective on that?
Sure. Yeah. And so now I'm not in a sales position. So, I don't have a quota that I have to hit. I don't have, it's obviously we all share the benefit of closing good loans at the bank. But at the opportunity that I'm at now, like I have the ability to structure very, very complex transactions with some very smart people within like the debt instrument industry, and see it through from the client-facing side while also doing underwriting to the closing side. So, it's still a job where you have to make some quick decisions on your feet, but you have to make sure that they're appropriate at the right times. And obviously, if there's if there's 50 loans that come in front of me and I'm not the one close, like if I don't close them by the end of the year, you start to have some issues there. So it's less quota driven, obviously, but we kind of work as the right hand man to a lot of lenders, or we have 3 primary lenders at the bank, to make sure that they're happy. The deals that they think work, they see itself through, and making sure that we're making like right decisions for the bank along the way too.
Got it. I'm curious. Obviously, you had mentioned that you were doing cold calling and that they weren't going to give you clients. You had to go get them out yourselves. I've been through that, and I've tried to do on the ownership side, looking for deals on real estate, right? Did you ever have like any doubts or wonder if you were in the right path? Doing this is obviously super tough. It's very, you got to get your own business. It's very entrepreneurial. So I'm just curious if you had any, worries or doubts about your career.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had doubts like taking the job, but I ultimately knew like if I give it 110%, like something's going to click, and it did.
Right.
So I know that like if I just went in and did my 9 to 5, it wasn't going to work for me. Like I had to go the extra mile. Make that extra call, meet with that extra person. And even if it didn't lead to anything, it's just another connection that you have down the line, and someone that you can theoretically, the people that I connect with, I trust. So, having those connections, it does come full circle, because there will be a time where, you talked to someone 3 years ago and then they're like, hey, do you remember me? I'm like, yeah, how's everything been? And, something transpires from that. The types of deals that we do at Northeast Bank don't really fit like the Boston commercial real estate market. We're a bridge lender. We do loan-on-loan financing also. So it's kind of another step removed from the Boston real estate market. Is very competitive. A lot of it is stabilized, but there's also a construction nature to it too, where that's where like the yield starts to increase a bit. But we don't do construction loans. So the connections that I've made during my time at Northern Bank, I still talk to them frequently. I like to keep in touch with them. But it's less deal flow from them now. But yeah, it's I definitely think like the risk aspect of uncertainty was challenging, especially when you're really fresh in your career. But having just like the right mindset that like regardless of the amount of I knew like if I worked my tail off and I failed, like I couldn't be upset at myself. It wasn't right for me to do that, and I'm lucky. I'm happy and lucky that that didn't happen. So,
Yeah, no, that goes to my next question is that you moved up so quickly in your career, so obviously that mindset and that work ethic kind of you would say made you stand out.
yeah, and I think it's also extremely important to rely on the people that you work with. Like really understanding like everybody that you work with is there for like help. There's no one really out to get you by any means. Everybody wants success for you. So being able to like really commingle well with your teammates, but also be there to support them and lift them up when they need it too is crucial. I mean, you can go in every single day and work as hard as you can, but if there's not like a cohesive cog and a cohesive team like working towards a common goal, then it's really hard to get there. So as much as I like try to work hard myself, like it's something that I've always done and like thoroughly love to do. So it's been, I really hope that and like try to pride myself on that. Like I try to, pick people up along with me too. And I work with a lot of very, very hardworking and dedicated, intelligent people. So it makes it kind of easy. But yeah, I think, being Northeast Bank's very entrepreneurial focused internally. So they are very, the hard work that you put in, it goes a long way and people recognize that. So, I'm very fortunate to have like be where I am today. But, a lot of it comes with people that you work with.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that I also noticed this summer doing my internship in a development company. The most important thing that mattered was who I was working with and who I was collaborating with. That kind of made basically the internship so enjoyable and fun, and I learned so much. I was nervous when I came in. I was nervous, like, oh, am I gonna fit in? Am I gonna, like I was just super nervous. But so definitely, I mean, the people who you're surrounded with is super important. So that goes to my next question. Would you say there was someone like a mentor who kind of inspired you and helped you along the way?
Yeah. I've had a ton, and it's hard to like just like pinpoint a single person. I think every role that I've had since I've started, I've had someone who's I've looked up to and have been kind of see what they did to become successful and try to take bits and pieces of what they do and add it to my kind of resume. I think just like from an overarching perspective, like my grandfather has been a huge piece of that, and same with my dad. They're both in the banking industry too, at different banks and doing different things. But they've been very supportive of me in what I've done so far. And like any time I have like a industry related question or just kind of like a question regarding like what would I do in this specific situation, they've supported me immensely. So I would say like from a career standpoint, like those two have been monumental to me, but also like just the bosses that I've had and have now along the way have been awesome. And I truly have not had like a boss that I didn't like, which has been it's hard to say for most people. So yeah.
To build off, the mentorship aspect, I mean, a lot of it really does come naturally, but can you speak to kind of how you're able to foster those connections, keep it, I guess essentially just having them develop you and, you being able to reciprocate some of that value to them. Like, how do you
Yeah.
go about establishing those connections?
Yeah. You really, I think connecting with someone on a personal level, like outside of work, like understanding their situation outside of work, is really important too. Like just like the constant check-ins that I find, just like the, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? Is there anything I can help out with? Anything you have questions on? It goes a long way. And it's when you're able to, in those instances, if someone's asking for your opinion or your feedback on a certain situation, like that's like a really important time to be transparent and tell them like not what they want to hear, but honest feedback to be like, this is like the best thing for you, in my opinion, to like proceed with this certain situation. So, I try as best I can to talk with the people that I work very closely with, like bi-weekly, if not daily, just to make sure that everything's kind of moving in the right direction and everybody's, happy. But, it's, I think, part of it is just leading by example too. I've kind of found that my entire life. Like if I know that if I work hard, other people will, I think it goes a long way, and other people also like that, someone who, not saying they look up to, but potentially are a peer. It makes them work harder too. So I believe that's true.
Absolutely. And do you think, kind of looking back, do you think you would have done something differently in college or early in your career?
No, honestly. I think where I'm at today, if you ask me, like, coming out of school, do you think you'd be where you're at now? Like, I would say no. And even in college too, like, I think, juggling school and football was a lot. Mentally, it's just as well as physically. The friendships that I've made from that are life lasting, and the kind of connections that I've made from school, not just like on the team, are extremely important to me in a work setting too. And then just the way that things have transpired, like over the past, I guess, gosh, what's it, 7 years now, have been great. So I'm happy with where things are at now. I think looking back, like I'm not someone to like really like dwell on the past. Really, like I really am focused on kind of like what's the 5 to 10 year future, and then also what can I do today. So yeah, I mean no, I don't really have any major look backs and say, oh, I wish I had done that differently.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, what's one thing you would say to a student that is interested in getting into the space that you're in, banking, to set them up for success? Is there something specifically that you would say to them?
Yeah, I think really understand the environment that you're in, and know that if see who the key players are. There's always a few on each team, and kind of pick from them. How did they become successful at what they do, and try to like study that as much as you can. Become kind of try to have conversations with them as much as you can, like whether it's quarterly, monthly, just to kind of have that discussions, and then don't just like think outside your organization too. Like there's Northeast Bank plays a very, very small role in the greater landscape of commercial real estate, but also banking in general too. So having connections at other banks, at equity shops, at brokerage firms, just understanding like where things are that they're seeing, is important. And then I think also just like banking is a very great way to kind of see all different sides of financing. I have worked on deals as small as like a few truck loans for a local company in Woburn, up to $75 million transactions for a private equity lending shop in LA. So it's you can see a lot and learn a lot too. It's really like a broad stroke type of environment. So I think it's a great profession. I wish more people would get into it coming out of college. I think it's been foreseen as kind of like a thing of the past, but really, commercial lending plays a vital role in today's landscape, especially in Boston too.
And you mentioned, you're future orientated, always looking ahead. So my next question would be, what's next for you? Any specific goals, plans? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I love the bank that I'm at now. I love the people that I work with now. You see the people that have had a lot of success for the bank. They've been there for 10 plus years. I have full intentions of continuing to do my job here, and then being able to potentially offer my maybe helping out on a different side of the bank. We do things, we have a full origination platform, which is really what I work on. We have a purchasing side of the business too, where we buy big pools of loans on the secondary market. So, seeing if I can help out in that instance and so on and so forth. But I see there, there's a good, there's a good kind of career path for me here that I want to continue to grow at. And I think from just a learning perspective too, I learn something new every day here. So it keeps you, it's almost like an addiction. Like you're like, what else can I kind of figure out? But yeah, no, and just personally too, I just got married in April to my wife who I've been dating for 10 years. Thank you. So we have obviously, family plans beyond that too. So it's an exciting time. We just actually we're going to get a puppy in the summer too. So that's a exciting time for us as well. But yeah, so I mean, I want to continue to grow professionally myself too, but also just to the best that I can help people around me too is very important.
Awesome. So just wrapping it up, if you could leave our listeners with one key takeaway from your story, what would it be?
Yeah, don't be afraid to take risks. Taking a risk, thinking that you're isolated, you're on an island, there's always going to be people there to support you in any facet. If you work hard and make good and are kind and are respectful and treat people the way that you want to be treated in a workplace, anytime you have opportunity to expose yourself, you are going to be supported thoroughly. So, make sure that if you feel like you're in a position where you're not sure and you want to take the safe way, you're very right in deciding that. But I think ultimately what's best for you is weighing out the options. And if you're exposed even incrementally, just try your best to kind of see it through and what the pros would be on the other end. But yeah, I mean, I'm sort of a true believer of you get in what you get out, and finding the right place for you that also takes that to mind too when it comes time for compensation review and just understanding where you fit in the grand scheme of an organization. That's the right place to be in.
Awesome. So just lastly, how can students connect with you if they want to reach out or learn about what you do?
Yeah, I am on LinkedIn, so Connor Peck. Feel free to shoot me an invitation. If you want to shoot me a note, just say you're part of the Bentley Real Estate Group. I hope to kind of come back and do some more. We did that career fair thing, which I thought was great earlier this year. So hope to come back and do some more things like that. My email address, I don't know if you can post it anywhere, but it's cpeck@northeastbank.com. Reach out. I mean, honestly, I would love to have conversations with people who are just either they know what they want to do or they're not sure and just want to chat. I love to make connections and talk with people and kind of hear their stories and see if I can offer any insight or just be there as an outlet. I am happy to. I'm an open door. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Connor, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank
Thank you,
you.
Connor. I appreciate